Tri-Cities sports fans. The name of the program, Tri-Cities Sports Now, on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities, where we own the Tri-Cities. And yes, there has been tragedy that has befallen people. And I'm going to take a moment of silence before I tell you two things. First of all, I had an aunt. My grandfather's sister passed away, age of 93 yesterday. That was, that's always tough. Another family member. We've lost 3 family members, close ones, and a dog this year. Really, over the last, 5 months or so. So it's been a little bit difficult here. This is always tough, but we don't mean to have a downer on the show. But I do think it's important to remember these people, and especially there was a death that hit the Tri-Cities sports community just yesterday. And Tom Conrad, who was Ed DeChillis's top assistant at ETSU, and became kind of known around, as the all-around good guy. I remember when DeChillis left for Penn State, I lobbied on the internet, and I want to remember if I wrote a column in Sports Talk for it or so, but I thought that Tom Conrad should have been the new head coach of ETSU basketball, and I know he wanted the job. Talk more about that here in a second, but his daughter, 20 years old, passed away. She was attending school in Lexington, Kentucky. I had heard, but it isn't official on a cause of death. I don't want to go on the air and reveal that. However, from what I understand, and I know of no other way to say this, but it would not be uncomplimentary to her. It was a tragic accident, from what I'm being told. But anyway, our thoughts and prayers go out to Tom Conrad. And yeah, I've done this before where I've taken a moment of silence. So for my Aunt Doris McGilvery, as well as Tom Conrad's daughter, let's just pause for a second here. All right. Coming back, let's try to liven the mood up. Life is for the living, right? All right, a few notes here for the program. I'm going to talk. I read a story. I don't know the last time I read a story in Sports Illustrated that really touched me as much. Sports Illustrated is doing their year in sports media, and I guess that as a member of the media, and perhaps more than anyone else I know, I like to discuss the sports media and how it relates to the games that we cover and such. I am intrigued by how, for instance, sports in Tennessee are covered, as compared to, say, sports in, Atlanta, New York City, Los Angeles, Harlingen, Texas, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, wherever. Okay. I wanted to point out here, and I've done this, there is an article in Sports Illustrated, and what do I rally against a lot around here? I say that the media, a lot of homers. There's a piece written that says, you know what, this is commonplace. I'm going to get to that. Paul Zeiss, who is an old friend of WEMB, when we did this show under a different name, under a different format. I did this show as a much younger man. He was a regular stringer. He used to interview Heath Schuler for us. That tells you how long ago that was. He is now a big-time sports columnist and sports talk show host up in Pittsburgh. And although I just got a tweet saying, hey, I have an appointment, and so he won't be coming on in 15 minutes. Hopefully, sometime throughout the day, we will have him on. We'll also talk to Caleb Calhoun, all for Tennessee. He's got an interesting story. Tennessee has the 185th best fan base around. Tennessee Volunteers. You say 185th? Yeah, 185th. But hold on. He's not just comparing college football programs. overall college programs. This is an interesting thing that came up on Fansided. They're not digesting, in this case, just sports teams. Talking about fandom of everything. Game of Thrones, Star Wars, Wonder Woman. Yeah, I mean, just fandom in general. Of all the entities out there, the Tennessee Volunteers rank 185th. Of course, Ohio State ranks number 1, so, we'll discuss what that means, and all this. But also, there's a pretty big basketball game, UNC and UT, coming up. There's a lot of trade rumors coming out of the winter meetings day after the winter meetings. Yankees really want to, I think they want to go after the all-time victory record. They're now talking about picking up a top-line starter from the Pirates, Garrett Cole, and there's some other rumors going out there. The Orioles are getting in their way of trying to improve their team. I'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, there's a lot of scuttlebutt going out there. The Arizona State athletic director doesn't think much of the Tennessee athletic director. Well, that's always intriguing. Is Adrian Peterson's career over? What about the Appalachian State former coach there getting the job now of the men's basketball team at UNC Charlotte? What about the Steelers-Patriots game, which is what we'll be talking to Paul Zeiss on? What about the continuing dropping like a brick aspect of the Tennessee Volunteers recruiting ranking? They're down to 10 commits now. Admittedly, the commits average out to 3.5 on the star scale, which isn't bad, but I talked about how just, before last week, at the start of the week, Tennessee was ranked 53rd among recruits by rivals recruiting this year. They had peaked at number 7 under Butch Jones. Butch Jones is fired. There's a ton of decommits. They're going to Nebraska. They're going all over the place. However, Tennessee is now ranked by rivals 61st. Again, I'm the guy who says, hey, look, what does it all mean? The thing is, though, as much as I say you can take the recruiting rankings and you shouldn't put that much weight in them, I'm fond of saying Derek Dooley never had a class ranked beneath number 17. But you know what? This isn't a good sign at all. Talk a little about that. But you know what I want to begin with? I want to begin talking about ETSU, as I am wont to do. TSU's got a biggie basketball game we'll be talking about. 10th ranked Xavier tomorrow, 2 p.m. up in Ohio. We'll take on the Musketeers. If ETSU could win that game, you can start talking a little bit about an at-large berth. Potentially, maybe. I know it's never happened in the Southern Conference, but guess what? You'd be talking about a victory against Northern Kentucky, and you'd also be talking about a victory against the number 10 team in the nation, plus whatever they would do in the Southern Conference. By the way, next week, beginning the 19th and the 20th, there are several biggie basketball games. Southern Conference teams will be playing big boys. Look for those. Southern Conference last year, 0-19 against the top 50, if you will, and computer rankings, Ken Pomeroy, etc. Look for these games this weekend. If the Southern Conference can pull off an upset or two, then possibly you could be talking about, okay, maybe this elevates the strength of schedule. Maybe this elevates the conference RPI. Without it, no. It's not going to happen. I mean, the Southern Conference, last year ranked 15th. I think they've been as high since I've been following them as 14th. It's a good basketball conference. I mean, there are 32 basketball conferences, so it's in the upper half. However, Last year, only 9 conferences had multiple bids. So you need something, you need these signature victories. Talk a little bit about that coming up. But I want to talk about this, and it's, again, relating a little bit on how media is covered, how we cover sports around here that maybe they do not in Philadelphia and San Francisco, even in another college town or in another market of this size. Example, the promotion of George Quarles to offensive coordinator at Furman. You may have heard about this week. Now, he had been talked about as the ETSU head coach, and so let me just ask you this. Why would you, okay, I'm promoted to offensive coordinator at Furman, sure, but if you're really, a candidate at ETSU and they do this maybe to scare away the Buccaneers, maybe, in other words, I don't care if they've just promoted you. ETSU head coach, same conference, ought to be a higher ranking job than offensive coordinator at another Southern Conference school. Now, I realize Quarles is a Furman grad. So my point is that promotion should not eliminate him from consideration for a head coaching position in 2018. What it ought to do instead is make you wonder why he's considered a candidate in the first place, because I do think it is very disturbing. I had Jeff Birchfield, John City Press, at the Unicoi County Science Hill game. We just briefly discussed, and he's like, Quarles, look there. I don't know if Birchfield knew something that I didn't. I didn't go into there, but we're talking about a guy a year removed from high school. And I absolutely think it is absolutely time for people to realize ETSU is not a glorified high school. Now, don't knock Quarles. I'm not doing that. He obviously was a legend at Maryville High. 250 wins, 16 losses in 11 years. 250 and 16 in 11 years. Excuse me, in 22 years. I knew that didn't add up. 250 and 16, 11 state championships, some in 4A. I mean, now Maryville is 6A, but still, 22 seasons. 250 wins, 16 losses, 22 seasons. Do you realize that this past season, just in the playoffs, I'm going to give you some news. Dobbins Bennett, they used to always say we're the winningest high school football program in Tennessee. They're not anymore. All time, the Rebels, Maryville, 785 games won. Dobbins Bennett Indians now 782. As a tight ends coach, Quarles this year, did real well. Got a skinny beanpole by the name of Andy Schumpert. Caught 32 balls, averaged more than 20 yards a catch. It's unheard of for a tight end. Unheard of. Furman, he was the associate head coach, assistant head coach, whatever that, 3-8 to 8-5 in the playoffs this year. Not a bad. He's a good coach, don't get me wrong. But since he is such a good coach, let me ask you this. He's a college coach. Now, why didn't Tennessee pursue him? Well, you got to be kidding me. Tennessee's better than that. This is an FCS assistant just 1 year removed from high school coaching. You've got to be a madman to even bring that up, Marky. Agreed. So why would ETSU be any different? ETSU, Furman, Tennessee, they're all Division I universities. While ETSU, yes, a fraction of the budget of Tennessee, we get that. 22 fewer college football scholarships. Do you really think the Bucks are closer to a high school, be it Maryville, be it, Cleveland St. Ignatius, be it wherever, a high school who they will never ever play than they are to Tennessee, who ETSU will play in football next season and twice in baseball, and they just played them in women's basketball. In other words, ETSU is a lot closer to Tennessee than they are Maryville High School. But that's not the perception around here. Very small-minded, very towny. Besides that, the mentality, not everybody, enough people. High school coaches rarely hired to be college head coaches without some sort of apprenticeship as an assistant. And it usually lasts more than just 1 year. For Jeremy Pruitt, for instance, 11 years. Okay. But when high school coaches are hired to make the leap, head coach to high school, head coach to college, the leap is usually so large that they almost always fail. Tony Sanchez, he's UNLV's football coach. Position once held by John Robinson. Sanchez was 85-5. Let me repeat that. Numbers sometimes don't come out that well on the radio. 85-5, 6 state championships in 6 years at Bishop Gorman High School in Las Vegas, Nevada. So the Rebels hire him to be their head football coach. Yeah. Rebels are 12-24 in 3 seasons under Tony Sanchez. That's what happens when you hire a high school coach. The mindset that somehow ETSU is close to high school athletics in Division I. Wait a minute. ETSU is Division I! And frankly, the mindset that ETSU would be closer to a high school than a major college program, which it could be argued that they are because they are D1. I mean, that is a liberal, the 351 that play college basketball are all major colleges, is Chicago State, a major college athletics program. Well, by a certain definition, it is. And so, a generation ago, fans theorized Science Hill could beat the Bucks on the hardwood just a few years after ETSU was a mainstay in the NCAA tournament. This is the mentality that so many sports fans around here have, and frankly, it makes them look stupid. No, a high school team could not beat a college team, especially not a high school team known for producing really nothing but JUCOs. Now, we say this, and I want to ask you, today the idea is that a coach who had success in an East Tennessee high school, back then is what my point is, you used to hear, oh, Science Hill could beat ETSU. No, they couldn't. And now, and Tony Sanchez, and I can give you a ton of other coaches that would be, Bob Wade, for instance, at Maryland. You don't make the jump from high school to college in one single bound. I know John Thompson did it. That was 1972. That was also after he played all those years for the Boston Celtics. May have been successful in the 40s. It isn't now. So the idea that a coach who had success in East Tennessee high school should be considered for a major college coaching position is just ludicrous. And yet that was also the mindset of the 1990s, that, oh, Science Hill could beat ETSU mindset, when local fans and media ignored the immensely talented crop of coaches that Keener Fry had brought in to become the ETSU coach back in 96. Let's go through them again. Ed DeChillis, Jeff Lebo, Buzz Peterson, Derek Wittenberg, all coach teams that go to the NCAA tournament, all wind up in major college conferences, assuming you call the Atlantic 10 a major college conference. That's where Wittenberg went up, and he coached Fordham for a while. But, all of them. Instead, what we hear, why can't George Pitts get an interview? Well, I don't know, maybe Keener Fry knew who Bob Wade was. But the mentality around here is so high school orientated, which I think keeps the perception of ETSU down. Let me give you another example. Chip Kessler, a lot of respect for him. Former ETSU play-by-play announcer. Also published a magazine I used to write for called Sports Talk. You may remember it. It sort of begat Tri-Cities Sports Now. It begat TricitiesSports.com. We're thinking of changing the name so we avoid confusion with them here in the future, okay? But no. Back in the day, end of the 90s, who do you think the most significant person, sports person of the decade should have been in the Tri-Cities back in the 1990s? Let's look back. I think there's only one guy you could say, Mr. Jennings, right? They chose George Pitts. Jennings gave the area national attention. Pitts, statewide. I mean, there's no comparison here. Sports Talk made Pitts, not Jennings, sports person of the decade in the 90s. High school mentality strikes again. Then again, ETSU does do a pretty good job of inviting that high school mentality towards them. They play on the Science Hill campus, football and basketball. Oh yes, I know, there's now the stadium that should be named after John Robert Bell on the ETSU campus, thankfully. But why weren't they playing at the Mini Dome for 2 years? Why is the basketball team not playing there? Why are they not discussing a new arena, which isn't in the middle of nowhere? Because, to be honest with you, as far as arenas go, there are no gas stations around, there are no stores around, there are no bars around, no restaurants, nothing around Freedom Hall. It's boring. Good sight lines, that's it. Off campus, so what? This is a mentality that needs to change in this area. Big news. Randy Sanders reportedly interested in the ETSU job. Randy Sanders, that's the offensive coordinator at Florida State, or at least he used to be. That's the guy who was the offensive coordinator in 1998 of the Tennessee Volunteers when they won the national championship. This is the sort of name that an ETSU is capable of attracting. Someone who has won national championships, not state championships. And if the Tri-Cities would realize that that is the sort of person that ETSU is capable of attracting, and not just the high school coach, which is always a failure when you hire them as a head coach, somehow, some way, let me tell you something, two things would happen. One, ETSU would be a whole of a lot more popular because we'd be thinking of them as a major university. We'd be thinking of them as the big league team around here, which I preach so much on this show. The other thing that would happen, the area would be much more cosmopolitan as well. We'd be thinking on the lines of major college athletics. We'd have that mindset and not the high school mentality, which has, ETSU playing at a 40-year-old arena instead of building a new one when a new arena is needed. Tri-City Sports Now.
Jim and Trav, we're diving into planning your 2018 outdoor adventures. Find out about prime DIY hunting opportunities across the country. Get the how-tos of applying for tags and listen for advice from the pros who hunt full-time. Joining us is Kevin Steele, host of Peterson's Hunting Adventures, Jeremy Millette with Silencer Shop, Mrs. Bunny, and more. It's presented by Outdoor Channel, Sportsman Channel, World Fishing Network, and My Outdoor TV. Saturday mornings at 11 on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri.